Tonight on Unreported World, Aidan Hartley reports from his hometown in Kenya on an extraordinary project to rescue the children who live on its streets. Many lost their families in a space of brutal ethnic violence, and the fear of that remains. But the children also need to be protected from the many other dangers of street life in Gilgil.
This is Dan Nderitu. As night falls, his work begins. He rescues street children.
It is very urgent because these are vulnerable young children. These are children who have been going through torment, who have gone through very, very bad times.
There are hundreds of street children in this tiny town, but that night Dan was most concerned about 7-year-old Ken and his 10-year-old brother Julius. He was hoping to make it their last night on the street.
Masharia mungetaka nikuje niwachukue saa ngapi? Yeah? Zazo zote. Ken says that he'll be happy to be taken off the street tomorrow anytime.
Okay.
Anytime.
Dan knew there was no time to lose.
Things go wrong. Children die in the streets.
Why can't you just rescue them tonight?
If I would rescue them tonight, something that I would really like to, without the documentation from the children authorities, it will mean that I have abducted these children.
Abducted them,
yeah.
Okay. Gilgil is close to where I live in Kenya. In the last 5 years, I've been horrified to see the streets filled with homeless children. Up and down this main street, you've got prostitutes, you've got drunks, you've got truckers. I mean, this is a very dangerous place for small children. Every night that they're here, they're vulnerable. Dan works for a small charity called the Restart Center. It first started sheltering kids when ethnic violence swept Kenya 5 years ago, and thousands of refugees arrived in Gilgil. It was already home to 70 children. Dan was determined to make room for Ken and Julius. But there was a problem. To take the kids in, Dan needed a permit from the government children's officer, and she couldn't be found.
Her phone is off.
Just off completely?
Yeah. I went to her office today. She was not there. I'm now going to try to call the police officer in charge of children affairs in the police station. Asante sana, madam.
The police couldn't help either.
Okay. We have got to wait until Monday.
The authorities are unable to deal with the worsening problem of street kids. Dan told me he sometimes gives officials mobile phone credits to encourage them to make important calls. We just have to hope that they're going to be safe over the weekend.
I can only hope so. I can only hope so.
Dan was especially worried about the children because in days Kenya would be voting for a new president. The previous election sparked the violence that had flooded Gilgil with refugees.
If they were here in the Restart, it is much safer for them. We are doing what everybody don't want to do. We are venturing in areas where people have failed. They don't want it. We are doing it. If we don't do it, nobody will do it.
I went into Gilgil to see how Ken and his brother Julius were getting on. More than a year ago, their mother had abandoned them. She was an alcoholic who had lived in a refugee camp. Now they were part of a gang living by their wits.
Ken, huwa ukiamka huwa unafanya nini kutoka asubuhi?
Tafuta za chai. Nikiamka nenda nitafuta za chai. Saa 7 nitafuta za lunch. Na jioni nitafuta saa 7.
One of Ken's friends is 9-year-old Joseph.
Bado kwenda shule kabisa.
Kwa nini?
Nilitoroka shule nikakuja huku town, sana nataka kurudi.
So wewe ulitoroka?
Mamangu akaanza kuuza chang'aa akashikwa. Nataka nikuwe na maisha ingine.
Na unataka ikuwe namna gani?
Nataka ikuwe mzuri.
To get money, they scavenged for charcoal and scrap metal, and they begged, and then they killed time. The Restart Choir was on the road. Presidential candidate Raila Odinga was set to address a huge election rally in the nearby town of Nakuru.
Tunashukuru na wabunge wetu, maraisi wetu na wote mulopika. Tukipiga kura tubaki kwa amani, amani twaomba amani.
The choir was going to perform a song calling for harmony.
Yeah, I hope it makes a difference.
It will make a difference.
The Restart Kids joined forces with other singers.
This is the big day that the choir has been waiting for, singing about peace, appealing for peace to the leaders.
Halfway into their song, their performance was cut short by the arrival of the presidential candidate Raila Odinga.
Not one, not two, but 3 helicopters have landed, costing thousands of dollars an hour. It underlines how expensive these campaigns are and how rich these political candidates are. Yet all of these people are very poor, earning only a few $100s a year per capita. Kenya is one of the most unequal societies in the world between the haves and the have-nots.
That night, Ken and his brother Julius were still sleeping rough. We found them on their usual stretch of pavement. Dan told me he was once a street kid himself.
I used to be like this children. I used to beg from the streets. I used to sleep in the streets.
Sleeping like this, what do you remember?
It is bad. It is to an extent where you cannot wake up in the morning. The body is so stiff, it is so cold, that even your body joints cannot be flexible. It is a horrible experience.
He was haunted by the children he hadn't been able to save.
A young boy who was, I think, like 4 or 5 years, I just knew him as minor. I was trying to go and speak to the authorities. It took such a long time that before I could do it, this boy was thrown into a pit by who God knows who. His body was found like a whole 1 week, rotten body. It is such desperate.
That's a horrific
And
story.
those are some of just the cases that we know.
The Restart team prepared an urgent letter to the children's officer.
Ken Wainaina and Julius Macharia. These are two brothers.
He set off to deliver it by hand.
So it says, "Dear Madam, this is to inform you that our organization has agreed to admit Ken Wainaina, aged approximately 7, Julius Macharia, aged approximately 10. They have been living on the streets of Gilgil, scavenging for food and begging. Our social worker, Dan Derito, has been following up the cases of these children and confirms to us that these children deserve and need protection within an institution. We have put everything in place to ensure their comfortable accommodation and upkeep. Kindly give us the necessary authorization to bring these boys into our Restart Center today. I look forward to your favorable response."
This is the culmination of several days' effort. The children's officer never seems to be at her workstation. We've been told we can't go in and film inside, so we're standing outside waiting for Daniel. Success?
Yes.
Okay, what happened?
I'm so happy that although the children officer is not around, I've met her assistants who have just signed my letter.
Okay, so it's stamped by their office.
It is stamped by the children officer to allow me to get Ken and his brother into the restart.
It's actually an amazing moment.
It is an opportunity that has come for these children.
Yeah.
Sasa Naina. Sasa Ken, tumekuja kuchukua sasa na mattress tumebai. Kuna chakula, kuna nguo, kuna mattress, kuna blanketi. So Macharia na Ken twende. Wewe nilisema wewe utakuja. Now they are
What do you feel? I mean, he's asking if he can come too, isn't he?
Yeah, but
what do you feel about the fact that you can't rescue all of them?
it's very sad that we cannot do it now. Joseph.
Ken tried out his new mattress for comfort, but Joseph and the rest of the gang would be sleeping cold on the streets.
I'm telling this young man that we will sort out his case. We can sort out his case tomorrow, because we need to go and see his mom, don't we?
Peter, I have told him 1,001 times. It is only here he's so desperate. But
we'll take you. I promise. We'll find a space for you. Okay? We'll find a space for you, my friend. Don't worry.
Hapa ama pale kwa ship. Kibora niwapate. He's crying because he feels vulnerable. He have gone through beatings, through harassment, through abuse, and he thinks now it is too bad for him. You can see he have got scars, and you know, you never know what is awaiting him tonight.
But once again, Dan and his team couldn't save a child without permission from the authorities.
Sign kwa watoto tumekuchukua alafu. Umesikia? Lakini usifikirie tumekataa. Sawa? Sisi tunawapenda, ndio sababu tunachukua hao. Okay? Sawa? So usilie rafiki. Panguza nini, usilie sasa.
Sasa tunaenda, nataka nyinyi watu muwe vijana wazuri. Mimi nimeambia kila mtu kwamba niko na vijana wawili, vijana wazuri sana. Sawa sawa? Hey, nawajuana.
On arrival, the boys were reunited with other kids who they'd known from life on the streets.
They knows him. Yeah, they know him. Ama vijana wote wawise nikitaka kujua hii ama ile, mtasaidiwa. Sawa sawa? Mtu ajisikie hapa ni nyumbani.
Ken and Julius were given new clothes. But changing their behavior would take longer.
They fight for food. They fight for survival. They don't give others any chance because it is a sense of surviving in the streets. So transforming them from what they believe in to different people is going to take some time.
It's nearly lights out in the dormitory. It's been a long time since Ken slept in a proper bed.
Yes, sir.
He's come in from the cold.
Has been duly elected, the President of the Republic of Kenya is Uhuru Kenyatta.
A week later, Kenya had a new president, Uhuru Kenyatta. But the big news at the Restart Centre was the papers had arrived to let Joseph check in.
Who's this? Joseph! This is something. What happened?
When I went back to check on Joseph, so he asked me, am I coming to the Restart? I told him, we are going to make these arrangements. He's a bright boy.
Mimi najua kudrive, najua kuruka lakini naruka mbele bora.
Okay.
Najua kipa lakini naruka mbele bora.
Okay. So very soon he'll be joining our football team. Aha. Huyu kijana ile mambo amepata kwa street. Huyu. Gota sasa. Unajua. Mimi nikipeana kitu yangu. Iwe ni baiskeli, iwe ni kompyuta, iwe ni simu, iwe ni anything. Sawa sawa. Ni lazima mtu ajue kupea mtu mwingine.
The Restart would soon be sending Ken and Julius to school. And Joseph is being tried out in goal. The new president has promised to give every school child in the country a laptop. Right now, the poorest school kids in Gilgil would be happy to have pencils. That evening, Dan started work again to save the next child.
Fiercely delicious trio of desserts.